Hello, my lovelies. We are back for segment 6. This is the grief and loss during recovery segment. And I would like to apologize for the long gap in between segments 5 and 6 as I got COVID and I am still recovering from it. I feel better than I did last week as I could not talk without coughing or having to clear my throat constantly. So I'm back and we are going to go over grief and loss while in recovery. Grief and loss are emotions that anybody feels. Anybody has felt them at least one point in their life, and anybody and everybody will go through and experience grief and experience loss. Everyone is different in how they deal with it and deal with the grieving process. These feelings are compounded, however, when you're an addict, because you not only have grief or feel grief over loved ones, but you feel grief over the lifestyle that you once lived, the lifestyle of drugs and alcohol and partying and feeling good and numbing yourself. You can grieve the people and the friends that you had when you were living that lifestyle. And I say friends because if they were encouraging your use, then they weren't really friends, they were more acquaintances because friends don't do that. And you can grieve the places that you used to frequent as well. So, grief is something felt by everybody. Keep that in mind, but also keep in mind that everybody deals with it differently. No two people are the same in how they grieve. So, giving up an addiction is the beginning of a brand new, healthier life, but often these great benefits are balanced with tremendous feelings of sadness and loss. It's painful, but grief during recovery should be acknowledged. Otherwise, unpleasant feelings can drag you down into depression and anxiety and can serve as triggers to relapse. Unacknowledged grief can definitely lead you to relapse. Ignoring that you're grieving, ignoring that you're sad, is not healthy. To acknowledge it is to start the grieving process. So acknowledging it is a huge step towards starting the grieving process and healing yourself. Sobriety means making a lot of big changes, and giving up drugs and alcohol is only the beginning. Getting sober also means giving up familiar places and old friends that shared the same lifestyle. Everything feels uncertain and frightening. For most people in recovery, saying goodbye to drugs and alcohol is like losing a best friend. It was the only thing that was there for us when most people weren't. Even while addiction was destroying your life, that constant companion was always there for you. It comforted you and made it easier to cope when life became too difficult. Again, it was the friend that was there when nobody else could be there for you, or would be there for you because of your addiction. That's the crazy part about addiction. Addiction makes everyone go away. You lose everyone and everything. Yet, you crave such companionship that you get mad at everyone for running away and for leaving. And so the only thing you begin to trust is that substance that you're addicted to, because it's always there for you no matter what, no matter how hard it is to achieve that substance at one given time. It's still there for you and it still helps numb you and it makes you feel good for the time being. Losing a loved one, dealing with death and loss during recovery. Loss of a friend or family member is painful anytime, but the difficulty is compounded when the loss occurs while you're recovering from addiction, especially during the first weeks and months after treatment ends. Sometimes people suppress grief for years and even decades, coping by numbing themselves with drugs or alcohol. Unacknowledged grief is powerful and dangerous but it's never too late to work through a lifetime of intense loss and heartbreak. And I say it could be dangerous, again, because it can lead towards relapse. And ultimately, that is what all addicts are trying to avoid, is relapsing. So by not acknowledging your grief and your feelings, your emotions, you're putting yourself at risk of relapse. So there are 5 stages of the grieving process, and they are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. My apologies, guys. There is no single way to grieve, as I've said, and coming to terms with loss is different for every person. However, the 5 stages of grief, formulated by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in the 60s, offers a set of emotional stages that most people experience when confronting a major loss. Although the 5 stages originally were intended to help people work through the process of grieving for a lost loved one specifically, these were initially for the grieving of a lost loved one. They can be used, and they are helpful for understanding any loss, including saying goodbye to drugs and alcohol. So we're going to go over more in depth. So they're denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So denial is a natural defense mechanism that occurs when people aren't ready to acknowledge loss or impending death. Denial allows us to process bad news slowly so the healing process can begin. A person may seek a second opinion from several different doctors, or they convince themselves that the lab made a mistake. With an addicted person, they may deny the existence of an addiction or may joke about the severity of the problem. So, for example, let's say you're at the doctor's office and you've got a terminal diagnosis. Denial will make you say, oh no, you must have gotten something wrong. You must have mixed my labs up with someone else. The labs must have done something. Or if you're an addict, like many addicts do, and say, I don't have a problem, I could stop whenever I want, I just don't want to. That's only half of it, not wanting to. In all reality, you can't, not without help, not without support, because there's always going to be that chance of relapse if you don't have that support system. So again, that's only half of it. I don't want to. That's denial right there. I don't have a problem, I just don't want to quit. I quit whenever, I just don't want to. That right there is denial. Or if an addict were to joke about their habit, like, oh, I have to do this, or oh, blah, 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 like, ha, 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 any kind of dark humor, any kind of joke about it is denial, because you're trying to divert someone's attention from your problem to the humor in which you're making your problem out of. So, number 2, anger. As denial gradually fades, most people confront feelings of intense anger. You may direct that anger to close friends and family. You can even direct it to yourself, even though they aren't at fault in any way. If you believe in a higher power, you may feel rage, betrayal, and abandonment. Your anger is genuine, and it's important to acknowledge it. Make sure that if you're angry, let people know, let yourself know, yes, I am angry, and feel it. Don't avoid it. If you attempt to control or suppress the anger and the feelings, they can threaten your hard-won inner peace and extend the grieving period for longer than necessary. Again, everybody is different, and some people grieve longer than others. Some people grieve very shortly and then move on, but everyone is different. And you don't want to threaten that inner peace that you have worked so hard to obtain. Anger will fade in time, and getting the feelings out ultimately will help you heal. It's not good to hold anger in. Bottled up anger will eventually come bursting out, and when it finally does, it's going to be much worse than it was when you first started bottling that anger and those emotions up. So please acknowledge that you're angry and feel it. So bargaining. This stage is an attempt to regain some form of normality. And it can take many different forms. For example, you may try to convince yourself that you can control your use of drugs and alcohol like a normal person. Or you may try to make a deal with God or your higher power. Thoughts like, please, if you spare my husband or wife, I promise to be a better wife or husband, are typical. It's this typical. If you have faith in your higher power, then thoughts like, please spare them. I'll be better if you can spare them, please. That's the I've been taking this person for granted thought in your head too. Guilt and self-blame often go hand in hand with bargaining. So you could have felt guilty. Maybe I should have spent more time with Dad before he passed. I should have made her go to the doctor sooner. These can be a form of bargaining with yourself and your higher power. But they're also a form of guilt. Like I said, I should have spent more time with him before. Or I should have made her go sooner. It's the shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's already happened, and you can't go back and fix it and change it, so you shouldn't hold it against yourself. There's the guilt. You shouldn't hold the guilt against yourself because that can also hold up the grieving process. Number 4, depression. It's common to feel overwhelming sadness when you begin to fully grasp the damage caused by your addiction or the life-changing impact caused by the death of a loved one. You can no longer deny the situation, and it becomes clear bargaining is not an option. You may feel depressed throughout the grieving period, or the feelings can hit you like a ton of bricks. This period can be especially difficult if you are already struggling with depression. So you could be fine one day and then wake up the next and all of a sudden, boom, depression hits you like a ton of bricks, like I said, and just come out of nowhere, and you don't know how to deal with it because you haven't been depressed. There you go. If you're dealing with depression already, you know what to deal with. But it doesn't get any easier when you have the added depression of grieving too. So you can also feel it throughout the entire process of grieving. Either way, that too needs to be acknowledged, because at this stage, you can no longer deny that your loved one is gone and they're not coming back. You're not going to talk to them. You're not going to sit with them. You're never going to hug them. You have to come to terms with that. And this is what depression is, because you are starting to come to terms. The last one, acceptance, is the one where you've come to terms with it and you're moving on, and you're not forgetting, but you're moving on with your life, because you have to move on with your life after a lost loved one, after addiction is over, after you're getting sober. You have to move on. That's another thing. Depression can come with the fact that, oh, maybe I do have a problem and I do need help for this problem. So you can't deny anymore that you have a problem. And that's where depression comes from, because you know you have a problem, and then guilt comes in too, because, oh, look at everything I've done. I've hurt people, I've stolen things, I've done horrible things in the pursuit of my addiction. So this takes us to number 5, step number 5, stage number 5, and that is acceptance. You may still experience sadness, regret, anger at this stage of the grieving the final stage of the grieving process. But you are coming to terms with the new reality. As you gain insight, you accept that drugs and alcohol can no longer be a part of your life. Or you learn how to move on through life without your lost loved one. It's taken me years to get over my dad. I lost my dad 12 years ago this year. And I still have not completely gotten over it. Obviously. But I have been at the acceptance stage for years. He's not coming back. And I've been at the acceptance stage of my addiction too. I know I had a problem. I know I still have a problem. If I were to allow that problem to rule me, then it would come back tenfold, because I've been sober 7 years and I don't even want to think about going there, you know what I mean? But I am at the acceptance part of my grieving process for both my addiction and my father. And it was hard won. I can tell you that much. Things are definitely looking up. Some days will be harder, some days will be easier than others. And so you should continue to reach out to friends and family during any period of adjustment. Don't grieve alone. Because grieving alone can cause severe depression. Go to someone who understands what you're feeling, what you're dealing with. Never grieve alone. Things will get better, I promise. It may not look like it, especially in the beginning stages of the grieving process, but once you get closer to the final stage, that acceptance, it gets easier, I promise. You're never going to forget your loved one. You're never going to forget that you had a problem at one point. You're never going to forget your addiction. It's always going to be there at the back of your head. But as long as you reach acceptance that you have a problem, that you need help to fix it, or that your loved one is gone, you'll be okay. I promise. Okay. Working your way through grief and loss. Acknowledge your feelings of sadness, anger, regret, and guilt. There's no way around it. Coping with grief is tough, but if you don't face the painful emotions, they're bound to come out and they can take over your life, which is why it's dangerous. Do not let anyone tell you how to grieve or that the process should be squeezed into a specific timeline. Although there are some commonalities, your experience is yours alone, and you must work through the process in your own way. Please don't let anyone tell you you've been grieving for too long. Unless you've been grieving for decades and you're not trying to heal, please don't let anyone tell you, because sometimes it does take that long. But as long as you're trying to get through the grieving process, then you should never let anyone tell you how to feel, how to grieve, how long to grieve for, or why to grieve. I mean, even that. Here are some ideas that may help you to get through the grieving process. Take care of yourself. Grief is very exhausting, so be sure to get enough rest, eat a healthy diet without a lot of carbs, sugar, or junk food. Doing my research, a lot of things said this. Junk food is bad for the grieving process, but in my opinion, horking down a pint of ice cream makes me feel damn good, and it's yummy. So as long as you're keeping other healthy diet, like eating full meals of grains, the full table, make sure that you're not just eating junk food. Eat healthy too. Reach out to friends and family, even when you don't feel like it. Meet a friend for a movie or a cup of coffee. Seek out people who understand, as spending time with folks who don't get it is likely to be counterproductive and uncomfortable at that. It's really hard to explain things to people that don't get it, such as addiction. It's really, really hard to explain what addiction is like in detail to someone who doesn't get it, who's never been addicted. So find people, who get it, and go do something with them, even if you don't feel like it, because company can actually bring you out of yourself and make you feel loads better. Avoid triggers that may lead to relapse. Don't spend time with people who make you feel uncomfortable. Avoid places and things that expose you to drugs and alcohol. Don't go to bars. Don't go to shisty areas where you know there's going to be drugs or alcohol. Don't go to a party if you know it's going to be full of alcohol. Because believe me, there are parties out there that don't have alcohol. They're just get-togethers. Believe it or not, there are parties out there that don't have to include alcohol. So avoid putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, because being uncomfortable can lead you to relapse as well. Be aware of special dates, especially during the first couple of years. Anniversaries, birthdays, and holidays are especially difficult when you've given up drugs and alcohol, or if you've lost a loved one, like myself. I lost my dad 12 years ago this year, on the night before Christmas Eve. I lost my dad Christmas Eve. So holidays literally just, I struggle with holidays so bad. And I'm a recovering addict, so that feeling is compounded. I get so depressed around holidays because I don't have my dad. But I don't allow for that to sit stagnant, because my dad wouldn't want me to be depressed all the time. So, holidays. And we will be going over holidays in the next segment as well, just so you guys know. Because that's very important, in my opinion. Don't isolate yourself. Plan to do something special with family and friends, or schedule a counseling session. Especially during the holiday seasons or during anniversaries. Any special dates, make sure to keep yourself busy with friends or family or a counselor. Record your feelings in a journal. Read books that will inspire you and provide greater insight on how other people cope with grief and loss. It helps to get advice. Almost everyone has dealt with grief and loss. So it helps to get advice on how others deal with their grief and their losses, because then you can put some of that advice into action yourself. And again, everyone's different, so you may get advice from someone that you've already heard, and on the other hand, you may get advice that you've never heard that may actually help you. So, advice. Make sure to read other books, informative books on grief and loss, and how to power through grief and loss. Get moving. If it's difficult to get motivated, hit the gym or ask a friend to take a walk with you. Turn on your favorite music and dance, as dancing will help you express anger or sadness. Dancing or working out in general is a great way to get through your grieving process, because when you work out, it releases dopamine, serotonin, and other feel-good neurotransmitters that rearrange your way of thinking, and those hormones will make you feel better too. You may still be sad after, but you got that rush, and if you keep doing that, you're going to be okay. Try to give back to others. By helping others, you will feel better and more positive about life. Help others who have less than you. And I guarantee you, it's going to make you feel better. To see them smile and to see them say, thank you, I appreciate that, I truly appreciate that. It feels good right here. It really does. Pray or meditate daily in a way that works best for you. Whatever your denomination is, whatever your religion is, whatever your belief is, pray or meditate, and I guarantee you that'll help you get through the grieving process a little smoother as well. Stick to your regular treatment program, even when you don't feel like it. Attend 12-step meetings or other forms of group treatment. Talk to your therapist and do not hesitate to ask for help if you need it. That's the theme. Please don't feel bad about needing help. You are human, and everyone needs help at some point. So don't hesitate to ask for help if it's needed. While it's true that there is no set time frame for grief, it's important to seek treatment if you're having trouble accepting the loss. Most people tend to feel better about 6 to 12 months after. Don't hesitate to reach out if your feelings of grief are too much to handle or if they aren't resolving. Sorry, got distracted. Again, it's okay to grieve and it's okay to struggle. A lot of people struggle with grief and loss. But if you find yourself past 6 to 12 months and you're struggling with the loss and you can't move past denial or anger, then you should seek guidance. You should seek help for that. Sorry, I have to make sure my video isn't over or it won't continue. So, relapse is not inevitable. The pain and sadness of grief feel overwhelming, and it's normal to feel weak and fragile, especially during the early days of recovery. The early days are always going to be the hardest. You may be tempted to turn to drugs or alcohol to ease the pain. When urges become difficult to resist, keep in mind that ultimately, relapse only lengthens the grieving process because you have to keep yourself on the substance to be numb. You have to continuously keep yourself on that substance if you want to stay numb to your feelings. And sometimes we don't have money for that substance. We can't get alcohol. Maybe it's a day where the shops are closed and we can't get alcohol. Maybe it's dry and you can't find anything anywhere. You can't find your substance wherever you usually do. You know what I mean? So there are going to be times where you cannot be on your substance of choice and you are going to feel even worse. So it is always best to remember that it is just going to make things worse in the long run. It may feel like it's making things better in the short term, but in the long term, you're just going to make things even worse. If you do relapse, it doesn't mean you failed or that you'll return to your previous lifestyle. Some do return, but it doesn't have to be like that. Admit that you fucked up. Admit you lapsed and seek the proper help, the proper care to keep you going on the treatment you were on before you lapsed. Even if it means re-entering treatment. If you belong to a 12-step group, this is a good time to reach out to your sponsor and any trusted group members in your 12-step meetings. If you relapse, it is not the end of the world. If you fall, get up, dust yourself off, and get back to it. Relapse does not have to be the answer to anything.